Hello and welcome to another World of Warplanes video with me, Sir 10 Death. Very recently I have been reviewing some of the tier 4 multi-role fighters that exist in the tech trees, and I've already looked at things like the I-16L and the Hurricane 1, and very recently I looked at one of the two American ones, the P-43 Lancer. Today we're looking at the other American option, the Brewster F2A Buffalo, and asking, well, whether it's actually worth getting or not. As ever, there will be some gameplay footage, which is just loading up now, going on in the background. I'll be talking about what this plane does particularly well, what it doesn't do so well, and I'll be making comparisons with it against its country mate, the Lancer, but also against the other options available in other country tech tree lines. So the game's just loading up here, and it's quite a nice looking plane, isn't it? That's largely because I'm a bit of a sucker for buying pretty paint jobs, and every now and then I get to the mood to have a brightly coloured, ridiculous looking plane like this one. Bright yellow and silver fuselage, why not? So as ever, I'm going to be heading off towards this first ground area, and like I tend to normally do, I will be probably going to work acting more as a fighter, at least in the early stages. If you've seen my earlier reviews of multi-role planes, I don't use the ground ordnance that often, only if it happens to be a very obvious target, but normally I go to work with things in the sky and play more like a light fighter with occasional use of my outboard ordnance. So I'm just putting those guns to work here on the first target as well, getting a feel for the plane and seeing how it feels. This plane is almost fully upgraded, but not quite. I don't actually have the last engine on it, so it's not quite as quick as it can be, but the guns are upgraded. So let's have a chat about the plane then. When stock, when you first get it, it has 200 hit points, which in tier 4 is pretty nice, and when you upgrade the airframe, that will become 220, which is even better. Manoeuvrability ratings 65, which upgrades to 67, which for a multi-role is fairly standard. It's not bad at all, and it's certainly better than the other American one, the P-43. It's a bit better in its manoeuvrability. That translates into the fact that this will turn in 10.5 seconds, which will reduce to 10.3 when upgraded, which is near enough a second better than its country mate, which is quite nice. Altitude wise, it operates best around 800 meters, which is a little bit lower than the P-43, but both of them operate just around the 1,000 meter mark quite well, without any real problems. In terms of its speed, its typical speed when stock is about 250 kilometers per hour. When you upgrade that fully, it will go up to nearer 270. That is a fair bit slower than the P-43 Lancer, but as I said, this is a more maneuverable aircraft rather than a faster aircraft. So they're slightly different beasts, and although obvious comparisons will be made, there are differences between them, of course. Gun-wise, basically they are very much the same. This and the P-43 both start with two 12.7 guns and will upgrade to four 12.7 guns, and I've got the four of them on here at the minute. And I'm just checking out those guns and testing them out. They're pretty effective, they are pretty rapid firing, they don't overheat ridiculously fast, although you'll see a little bit later in this gameplay I decided to push the limits of seeing what will make them overheat, and I did actually manage to do it. Hooray for me. Yeah, outboard ordnance, this can carry two 100-pound bombs, but that's it. You have the option of no bombs or two 100-pound bombs, which are, to be honest, a bit lackluster. They'll do about 1,500 damage each, which is okay, but it's okay for finishing off something that's been heavily damaged by a bomber or a ground attack aircraft, but you're not going to be capping any bases single-handedly with those bombs. The other one, the P-43 Lancer, can carry two 250-pound bombs, so if you're into more supporting the ground attack, the Lancer is probably the better option, but this is probably the better one for air support because it's more manoeuvrable. So I believe it's somewhere along here in the very near future when I decide to test out those overheating guns and see whether I can push them into overheating or not. So game-wise, it's going okay. I'm not doing ridiculously well or ridiculously badly. I'm just trying to get a good feel for the plane and show off what it can and can't do. It does feel actually as though it's a bit more sluggish than the stats dictate. It's suggesting that a turn of 10.3 seconds is normal, but when I'm turning like this, it feels slower in the turn, not quite so impressive. So, as I've been talking about so far, obvious comparisons will be made against the other one in this line. If you were thinking to yourself, I want to go down an American multi-role line, which one should I go down? It's tough to call. This one leads into the Corsairs, which of course are very well documented, very well liked amongst most of the community, so this would probably get the nod for that reason. But the P-43, if you watch my other video, I will put a link to that in here right now. Yeah, that's where I'm just overheating the guns there, just to test them out a little bit. And they do overheat eventually, you just hold the trigger down, but yeah, they'll cool down fast enough anyway. Yeah, the P43 is quicker and carries bigger bombs. This one is a bit more manoeuvrable, so this is a little bit more like a hybrid light fighter, where the other one's a bit more like a support for ground attack. They're two different planes really. If I had to pick one of the two, this one feels nicer for me, but that's very much an opinion, and you can try them out for yourself should you want to. Making comparisons to other planes that exist in the game that aren't American, and naturally if you wanted an American multi-role you've got two lines to go down, but if you weren't bound by the fact that you must be a USA pilot, then you've got other options. You've got the Russian ones in the form of the I-16L, which I did a review of a couple of weeks ago, and I can link that in here now. If you look at the top right hand corner you'll see a card, and I also did a review of the British Hurricane Mark 1. I'll go on record and say that if you had to pick just one of the lot, the Hurricane is probably the best one by a fair margin. It's got the better guns, it's got the option to upgrade them into cannons. The I-16L can also have cannons as well. It has a decent amount of hit points, it's got reasonable manoeuvrability. In other words, basically the Hurricane 1 can do everything that this can do, but have a greater damage output, frankly speaking. So it's probably a better aircraft in my opinion. But naturally, if you are wanting to go down the route of the higher tier American planes, you've got to go for one of these two American ones, and for me this one feels better. I've just been knocked out there by that. I've upset that ground attacker, the BSH2 I believe. I shot him earlier and he's decided to hunt me down and finish me off there. Game wise I'm doing okay. I've got myself a few thousand combat points. It's not stunningly amazing, but it's alright. I'm just going to respawn and come back into the game. In terms of team wise, we're doing alright. It's yeah, we're winning by a reasonable margin so far, but it's never all over until the end in these games, because funny things can happen. Yeah, so would I recommend playing this? Well, it's not a bad aircraft. It doesn't feel like the most fun you'll ever have in the game. But it very much depends upon your playstyle. Naturally, if you like dogfighting, this is not a light fighter, and if you get into scrapes against light fighters, you will struggle. They will outturn you and they will outgun you. It's also not a ground attack aircraft, so if you're trying to do the job of something like the FW189C Ule, or you're trying to do the job of a BSH2 or something like that, you're not going to do that job because they've got massive outboard armament and better front cannons for taking out ground targets. It's a multi-role. It's designed to do a bit of both. What I'm doing here, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing when I respawn, I was deciding to see whether I could get to where those bombers were and test it out at a much higher altitude. Because obviously I said earlier it's meant to operate around 800 meters. I just decided, because I'm testing it and showing off what this does or doesn't do, to push to about double its expected altitude ceiling and try and go to work on these bombers. I was hoping they would be here, and they are here. I was hoping they weren't going to be right up 2,500 meters, otherwise I probably wouldn't have got them. But I've got a German bomber coming in towards me here, and I'm just going to go to work on him. And yeah, not that you would really recommend normally using this type of aircraft at this sort of altitude. It's part of my job as a YouTube video maker to show what this can do in the right circumstances, and it can of course do this and shred a bomber should you happen to get to that area. So it can operate quite effectively up to here. I mean, I'm flying just under 1800 meters, about 1000 meters above its best operating altitude, and it's still doing reasonably well enough. That one's just out of my gunnery range, but he's turning around now, and hello there. Hi, introduce you to my 12.7s, and you can chew on them for a while. I've just passed 7,000 combat points, so it's not a terrible game, it's an okay game. I'm doing alright. We seem to be winning this quite comfortably at the minute, and things are looking quite rosy. Yeah, so of the multi-roles I've reviewed so far, in my opinion, I would say the Hurricane 1's the better one of the two. After that, tough call. The I-16L, a lot of people really like it. I think it's okay, but it just doesn't feel great for me. But I, of course, am planning on pushing down all of these lines anyway, partly for the purpose of doing my YouTube videos, but also because I actually do want to explore higher tiers of the different playstyles and different aeroplane types that exist in the game so far. I'm just coming down now to try and help out, get on the tail of this guy here, and yeah, he's trying to we're at that point now where the score line's down. If you knock anybody out, they're not coming back. And unfortunately, while I'm going to work on him, somebody's on my case and I can't get away. This is where these planes really suffer, because you cannot outturn a fighter that decides he likes you. So I've been knocked out there, and this is where I have a bit of a shock. I think I've had a decent-ish game at about 9,000 combat points, and I look and think, oh lord, there's only actually 4 of us left alive. Although we were winning by a long way, I've just cut towards the end now, because there's 2 left and the bombers, and I'm delighted to say this guy here, Ezekiel, if he happens to be watching, very clever player. He hasn't had a stunning game, but he's had the sense to realise he's actually the last one left, and he is flying at 3,200 metres, pretty much at the top of where he can go, in a part of the map where people can't get to him. Very clever play. It just goes to show this guy, I left this in because this guy won us the game by using his brain, by realising he can't go and bomb everything, but he certainly can allow us to finish the game off by staying away from danger. Standard bunch of medals, the usual ones that you get for a few thousand combat points, and Class 3 fighter award, just under 10,000 combat points, and finished first on the team overall. I didn't feel like it was a stunningly good game, but actually it performed alright. You know, 67,000 credits in a non-premium tier 4 is not bad at all, and I did reasonably. It did not stunningly well. It's a decent game, nothing more. Shout out as well to the guy in the ground attacker on the other team, because you know he's pulled in what he's got there, about 13,000 combat points, and that's a lot. I've found when I've been playing with ground attack vehicles, you can only do the best you can, but if your fighters don't support you, then you're going to be knocked out of the game. As ever, thanks very much for watching this video, and I'll be keeping some others coming your way in the near future. If anybody ever has any particular requests, then do put them in the comments, and I'll attempt to address them as best I can as soon as possible. As ever then, cheers for watching now, goodbye.